This is our 1993 Toyota 80 Series FZ Land Cruiser. Well, that's not exactly an FZ now. We bought this car a little over 2 years ago, completely stock standard grandpa spec, and we've spent that time building it up into what it is today. 35s, massive suspension upgrades, and a complete Turbo Barra conversion with a built ZF6 auto behind it, all fully engineered and legal. Now that the build is finished and I've had nearly 20 episodes on YouTube documenting that complete process, Burto and I thought we'd sit down today and have a chat with you guys, answering the most commonly asked questions on the build and conversion. Do we regret it? Will we do it again? Some of the biggest mistakes we made along the way, and we've spent the last few hours tallying up every single part and component in this car, pricing it all up. So we'll go through that and then revealing the overall cost of this build, which we were pretty shocked about. Oh, and one last thing, this car, you know how it had one crash? Well, it recently had a second crash too, so we'll tell you what happened there.
Proudly supported by Opus Campers, Ultimate 9, Tread, Superior Engineering, GME, and in part by...
Alright, so we've got two cameras going. I don't know which one I'm talking to. Burto's here, the mastermind behind the whole build. We've got two laptops. I've got all the Q&As on mine, and then Burto's got the full price list on his. So we'll get to the price list in a minute, but before we do that, we'll jump into the Q&As. I'll just sort of list them all together. So these are the main topics that people brought up to us commonly across the build. First question, why didn't we turbo the FZ? Was it worth the hassle doing a full conversion, so much more expensive the way we did it?
It is a lot more expensive, but I think it has a lot more pros than cons in the long run. Better gearbox. The FZ gearbox was average at best. They're renowned to be average at best. FZs are terrible on fuel, and FZs are actually more complicated and harder to get parts for than a Barra. So, what, 3 good reasons?
And the other reason, from my perspective, was content-wise for YouTube. So Sam Young and Sam Isles had both done Turbo FZ builds in the recent 18 months before we started this. So it was like, I don't really want to be a third to do the same thing. And we'd already done some turbo content on the channel, turboing the GQ. A turbo is going to take less time and be less money, but also less content. So this was more time, more money, but a bunch more content and a better experience for us. Neither of us had ever really been involved in a full conversion like this, start to finish.
Yeah, this was the first for both of us.
Yeah, so it's just like, I don't know, a cool thing to do in life, and it makes sense what we do on YouTube. So that's why we didn't turbo the FZ. Next question is, why did we do a Barra? The first answer was I had a Ford Territory sitting at home that I'd bought 12 months ago for a rainy day. So I had like a car ready to go for a conversion. The second thing was, it's a common conversion with lots of aftermarket parts and knowledge available to help with the conversion, being that I had literally no idea. And this was your first time undertaking full conversion. We didn't want to go for like the most complicated one to begin with. Like, it's a Ford Barra, they're common parts. It's an easy to work on motor and setup, and they're available all over Australia.
Literally, you could drive anywhere. I reckon you'd go to the top of Cape York, you're going to find some sort of Ford that has a Barra in it, in a wrecking yard somewhere, broken down. There's going to be one somewhere. They're everywhere.
Which sort of comes into this question of, will the car ever be reliable? Because we always got comments like, it's going to be the most unreliable heap of junk. You're never going to be able to find parts. It's just going to break down everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Which you're going to be able to find parts for this way easier than an FZ. Yeah. Like anywhere in Australia. I suppose, what's your answer on, is it going to ever be reliable? Because people said, look, this is going to be a weekend warrior because everywhere you go it's going to break down. You're never going to be able to tour in it.
So, like, so far with what we've done in it, it's been reliable. Other than the fact we've sort of overlooked stuff and missed stuff in the conversion.
Yeah.
And we've just been ironing out bugs which we didn't know were issues, and that's all just part of it. Like, it's not unreliable.
Yeah. It's pretty much been fully, as you said, fully reliable, other than the fact that it's just taken us time to sort out bugs. But once we had them sorted, like in recent weeks, we've done like 4-hour drives, 5-hour drives, driven it around town all day. And I think we had one intercooler hose blow apart. We replaced that. The way I'm seeing it so far, I would not consider this is going to be an unreliable car. I'd be like stressed about taking it on a trip.
Yeah, we haven't had one single forward part fail on this conversion so far. Everything that has failed hasn't been a forward part, other than the gearbox, which we expected because we were asking for it to do something pretty unrealistic. It just happened sooner than what we thought it was going to.
And the next question is, we sort of talked about why we did a Barra, why we didn't turbo the FZ. Just people always bring up, why didn't you do something else? Like, why didn't you do it? You should have done an FTE, you should have done an LS. Why'd you do a petrol when you should have done a diesel? My answer is there's not really any answer. Like, we just chose to do this one.
I think that, and then like subconsciously, the main other reason is we don't want Demi to be driving around in something like an FTE where if she labours it around, EGTs get hot, they break. Petrol, you just hop in, you turn the key, you drive it. That's like, you don't really have to worry. You can rev it to the moon and it's going to be fine. You can drive it like an old lady, it's going to be fine. They're just simple.
Yeah, more simple than like driving a TD40 turbo TD42 or a turboed FTE.
Yeah.
I know LS uses an insane amount of fuel. Yeah. I don't really want that. Which actually, let's say that fuel, this thing's really good on fuel.
This thing is like 16 times better than what an FZ was, NA, let alone what an FZ would be turbo.
So, because the ZF6 gearbox, in 6th gear on the highway, doing 110, it's sitting at like 2,000 RPM, yeah, burning through about 12, 13 litres per 100. So, if you're like going on a big trip across Australia and you're sitting on 110 on the highway, like, it's the most fuel efficient car I own.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only other more fuel efficient car that's been on the channel is Gary's. Gary's MUX.
Yeah, the MUX, yeah, that's right. And probably the other one there is, why waste your money? Like, there's been a few comments, questions like that, and, you know, maybe some people, you know, probably just, you know, being sincere, they're not having a go at us, but why would you spend all this money on this? I have a stock standard FZ that drove all over Australia, which is fair enough. You could drive a stock standard FZ, one of these all across Australia, but I know for me, as I answered earlier, it was content. Yep. Like, this is what we do full time. So this build has been nearly 20 episodes. You know, I bought a stock stand FZ. There's, no episodes.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of content, and it's a unique car that stands out and draws attention to what we do.
It's a really fun, really nice car to drive.
Yeah, like, it's way funner and nicer than driving a stock stand FZ, which would do the job and would save you a lot of money. Yeah, they're the main reasons that come to mind. What we do, full-time job, you got to spend money to make money.
And technically, if we go all the way around Australia and do a fuel comparison on price for like FZ, fuel consumption and that,
yeah,
you're going to save a lot of money with having that motor.
Would we do another conversion? You might have a different answer, but I would say yes. I'd happily do another one again. And now that, like, we as a whole are more experienced of how the process works, what's involved, what it's going to look like, I would approach it with, you know, maybe a slightly different frame of mind.
Not like, hey, this will be done by Christmas.
And that was last Christmas, and now it's the 4th of December, and we're just finishing it off.
And like, I knew the whole time it wasn't going to be done like that. But I think with everyone saying all the dramas and whatever, every step along the way where we've gone to like the tuner or the engineer or any other sort of tradesman, they've looked at this car and gone, this is done really well. And we haven't actually had bugger all dramas. It's mostly just been teething issues, which is completely normal.
What was the hardest part of the conversion? Do you have a thought there? Because you obviously did 95% of the labour work.
For me, the hardest part would be all the wiring.
Yeah.
Figuring out how stuff works, trying to make it work, just, you know, spending hours and hours doing research, then organising parts, and then if the parts aren't actually the right parts, you know, you've got to spend more hours figuring it out, just figuring out what parts work with your personal setup. Like, you could have parts that work on someone else and they're like, oh yeah, this works, but in your situation it doesn't. And everything's sort of custom and you have to like just figure it out as you go.
A lot of trial and error, which takes time. Next one, how hard was it to get engineered? What do you reckon about that?
I'd say it was easy. The only thing that was hard about it was the exhaust, which we sort of did to ourselves anyway.
We sort of knew that was going to happen, that was going to fail. But other than that, I think it was easy for us, but it could be very hard for the wrong person. Yeah. And what I mean by that is I've engineered a car before and dealt with that engineer and know everything you need to do. Yeah. At your old workplace, you guys used to engineer a lot of four-wheel drives So I think that's what made it easy for us. We knew everything that had to happen. We got quality parts as well. I think you're going to run into problems if you don't talk to an engineer and you just go ahead and do a bunch of shit. And then he's going to come along and be like, well, why'd you do it that way? Like, this isn't going to work. Or if you use like real cheap, crappy parts. So if you do it yourself from the start and you're willing to spend the money to do it properly, it's pretty easy. Next question someone asked on Facebook, they asked this one. How much, I think they're looking at doing it themselves, how much outsourcing is required versus what could a reasonably mechanically skilled person do at home?
If you can weld and learn stuff quickly, the main real only hard thing that you probably have to outsource for is the wiring.
Does an engine conversion require engineering? And are there any limits in engine choice? So first one being yes. Limits in engine choice, my thought would be you can't put older engine in a newer car. Is that the general rule?
The engine needs to be from a newer model than the car and have a equal or better emissions. The other thing is weight. I've seen people comment on like trying to put cat diesels in and stuff, and they're just too heavy for your front axle load.
Next question, will it be a mall crawler or will we see it out the bush?
We're about to go out in this thing.
Yeah, we're about to take it out. So original plan was like a full mall crawler, maybe a beach here and there, but we're actually getting rid of the GU. So we're going to have the GQ and 80. So the GQ is going to be for all the hard tracks, the extreme tracks, but then when we do the family touring trips, Demi's going to come in the 80. So that's why we just bush wrap the whole thing to protect it. We'll just put the rear locker in it, just going to accept the fact that it's probably going to get a few scuffs, scratches and marks, but it's going to be like touring in it, not extreme stuff.
So like, you think we did the Central Australia trip, Simpson Desert, Flinders Ranges, all that sort of stuff we did in the GU. We'll do all of that other than maybe that rock garden creek that we went in that station. So pretty much national park, touring, camping, light four-wheel driving. Like, we'll take it on tracks. If it's all overgrown with lantana, we'll probably try and avoid anything with panel damage, but it's gonna get used.
What's favourite thing about the 80? Like, do we like it? Are we happy with it now it's done? I absolutely love it. Like, it's quite a nice, quiet interior. It's very fast, so it's fun to, it's fun to drive. Very fast for me. It's the fastest car I've had.
I like when you hop in it, it's just comfy, you just drive it. You don't have to change gears, it's auto, it changes lovely. You want to overtake someone, you just put your foot down, you're gone. The sound system in it's good. Like, literally every aspect of inside and driving this car is nice. It doesn't have crazy body roll. It drives literally just like a normal car.
Someone asked about diff upgrades. So as you would have seen, we did the rear locker in the rear diff, which helps strengthen it. We did the solid pinion spacer. So we're just going to see how it goes. It's not crazy Newton meters or power.
The diff in this, the rear diff, will last as long as we're nice to it, pretty much. I've got friends with 80 series with like an extra 400 or 500 Newton meters, over that 1,000 Newton meters. They haven't blown up a diff.
Yeah.
It all pretty much comes down to how you treat it, how you service your car. And we have the power coming on later than, everyday Barra. Like, we don't have like full power until 30-something hundred RPM.
Yeah.
So it's pretty not, like, most time your brake stuff is off the bottom where everything's trying to get moving. Once it's already moving, it doesn't break as much.
Yeah.
But I think like one day it probably will break.
Yeah.
But it's going to be plenty strong enough. It's not going to be like, I'm going to have to worry about it.
And then potentially the front's not front locked. So like 35s and no locket, same sort of thing. It's going to depend on how you drive it. Like, it's going to take some stuff, but if you're trying to limit or bash it up a rock step, it's probably not going to be happy. We'll potentially put a patrol diff in the front if we do want to front lock it. Next one thing, do we wish we used a turbo block and a turbo Z F6? What's your thoughts?
The Turbo ZF6 would have saved us from getting a built gearbox because it still would have been going. But I think in the long run, this is going to be better.
Yeah.
The motor, the engine, a turbo block, you spend like 3 times the money. We could have made more power and then we would have broke more stuff. So I think in the current situation, it's probably good to have this amount of power and we'll just use the car. Yeah. And if it ever does break, then we'll look at upgrading it.
Yeah, like, my thought is it would have been nice to have a turbo block and turbo ZF6 because it would have handled like what we're doing better and longer. But it's like 4 times the price to buy, and then you're dealing with old second-hand parts. Yeah. So you spend 4 times the money, and they were like half busted anyway, and then you have to get them built.
We would have been better off building a motor if we were going to go that way, but it was one of those things that we were just like, where do we stop spending money? I think a built motor was like 10 grand. I know we already spent a lot of money, but if you just keep spending 10 grand and 10 grand and 10 grand, It's a lot of money.
Yeah,
So-
it's a lot. And that's probably that's sort of the main topics and questions that get brought up. That brings into the main last two, which is what you're talking about there, the cost of the build, and then we can sort of add in how many hours went into that because we've totaled up labour too. So Berto spent a couple of hours now. You reckon you've got it pretty accurate? Like we've
I think we're missing a couple of small things, but this is like 98% of the car.
and you've Googled and spent time getting every single price. Obviously, it may vary depending on where you buy it, but we try and, just what we spent on it, where we got it from. And then it's segmented into, like suspension, driveline, conversion, all the different segments. So I'll put this up on the screen. You bang through it.
So initial price of the car, we bought it. It was an expensive one. I've said it was 18 grand. One owner. Suspension. It's got the full Superior Hyperflex lift kit, steering arm, steering dampener, and diff guard. Total on that's like $7,800. Wheel and tyre, we've just put. We're not counting the old tyres and wheels.
There was some things that were changed on the car, but we're just counting what's on it now.
We've got, the ROH Salts, they're $1,760 for 5. We've got the Goodyear Wranglers in 35s, they're $3,700, and then we've got the quick valve. So wheel and tyres, $5,600. And then in driveline, so wrecker motor, gearbox, chromoly flex plate, torque converter, dowel kit, the oil pump gears, the heavy duty valve springs, the tool to change the valve springs, your exhaust manifold, your turbo, your wastegate, your intake manifold, tail shafts, your rear locker, and then thermostat housing sort of thing that we had to put on there. So driveline total is $22,971.
That's an expensive part there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of very good parts. So I've also got conversion as a section. The wiring loom's pretty hard to do because, Josh half did it, I half did it. So we sort of just rounded a price on it, $3,000. You can buy the looms normally done for about $1,500, but then you still have to wire it to the car. You have to wire your fuel pumps up still. There's still a lot of extras, your tow pro, everything like that. So I've just rounded it up to $3,000 for the wiring loom. But you've got, your McKinnon's cruisers, engine mount, gearbox cross member. We got the aircon working, that was $4,500. Dump pipe, just the dump pipe and wastegate into one was like $2,000 in parts and labour. It's all stainless, it's all TIG welded. Plasma mount intercooler, the pipes for the intercooler, the rest of the exhaust, the airbox, the radiator, the transcooler, power steering res, catch can, radiator fan, alternator, radiator hoses. I haven't even got a price on radiator hoses. I reckon that's like $70, but we'll forget about that.
Yeah.
Your turbo beanies, your wastegate beanie, your boost controller, the original Ford Territory that we bought to do the conversion, your can barra module, your muffler and cat that we added into the exhaust, your PJ's off-road transfer case adapter, water pump, metal pulleys. So yeah, the conversion parts total was $23,588. We've got a fuel system, which for fuel system I don't have lines or fittings. This is just your fuel pumps, your surge tank, your fuel regulator, your fuel rail, and your injectors. That was $1,826. And then I've got a miscellaneous section, which Superior diff breather kit, part-time kit, your UHF. We did a full swivel hub rebuild with stub axles, rear wheel bearings, front wheel bearings. We put a 105 steering box on it, replaced the batteries, engineering. Total of MISC parts was, $87.66. And then we'll move on to the exterior. We've got bush doof headlights, the coastal off-road do-it-yourself bar work that we had to weld together, sand down, get painted, and buy by itself. So it's like $4,500 for all that stuff. You got rock sliders, bush wraps, decals, cruiser company windows, the sun visor. We did a little bit of panel and paint after the crash. We had to get new inner guards, get them painted, bonnet, all that sort of stuff. New tail lights, new corner lights, new front indicators. There's car builders under the bonnet. A new grille, even though we've got two, there's only one on there. We painted the rocker cover. So that is $10,550 for that section. After the exterior, we've got the interior. There's a mirror on it. There's driver's seat belt, car builder's full sound deadening kit, Polaris head unit. It's got a full audio system, sub, amp, speakers, CSS steering wheel on it with, all the button kit and central locking all working. We've got JRP gauges and a pillar pod that they go in. It's got sand grabber floor mats, a dash mat, custom seat covers, your Tow Pro Elite, your ARB air compressor. So even the interior is like $7,174. Like,
Man, I'm slowly having a heart attack as this is all building up.
and then we'll go race work fittings. So I've got the oil feed line. I've got a part breakdown. You'll be able to see on the screen, figure out what stuff costs. But the oil feed line is 196. The drain was 108. The water lines are 254. Your catch can, just the lines for the catch can and the fittings, 287. Fuel feed line, just the feed, is $312 in fittings and lines. The return line's $100. We have $258 in power steering lines. There's $311 in transmission lines. Clamps, all the little line separators and clamps to hold all the lines apart so they don't rub and everything. We have $390 in just clamps. Like, I didn't really, I just got everything. He didn't have a choice. And then in actual line itself, we had like a 10-meter roll of this, that, and like all the different ones we used. There's $824 in just braided line. I haven't even counted, your random rubber vacuum line, anything like that. It's probably only like an extra $100.
Yeah.
But the fitting and line total is $2,216 for just fittings and lines, plumb up the motor, gearbox, turbo, all that sort of stuff. And then it comes to the estimated labour.
Yeah, which it's a tricky one to figure out. This car was built over 2 years.
Yeah.
The conversion was done over a 15 month period.
Yeah.
It took us longer because it was the first time. We think it's probably 3 to 4 months worth of full weeks that we spent on it.
If we were to do just the conversion, we had all the stuff ready to go, probably take you max 2 weeks just to do the conversion.
Yeah.
But this labour is, putting the head unit in, wiring the trailer plug, wiring, like every single bit of labour that I've ever done on this car, which I've put it down to 8 weeks of 38 hours a week at 130 an hour, which is what you'd pay a shop, one bloke to do. Which if it's a custom shop that does engine conversions and stuff and they're special, they're probably going to be more than that. So we just sort of, went off our local sort of rate and then went in the middle between the high ones and low ones. So it's just sort of an idea. But yeah, 8 weeks, 38 hours a week, $130 an hour is $39,520.
And I honestly think that's like...
I reckon that's like...
scenario.
Yeah, like I've spent at least 10 hours one day trying to figure out how the speedo and the aircon work. Like, there's been days where I've just been sitting there looking at wiring diagrams, figuring stuff out, and you can't even count that time. So
best case scenario of build a car like this is 40 grand labour. I think you'd be paying anywhere up 50, 60 would not be stupid as well. So we got just under $110,000 worth of parts you added up there. And then we add in the nearly $40,000 of labour. We come in at just under $150,000 to build this car, which that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of car.
That's a lot of money and a lot of car. To answer the question of what I personally spend, we didn't work that out. I would have spent a bit less in parts like the suspension I got sponsored. The wheels and tyres I got sponsored. I still paid for a large chunk of the conversion sort of thing. Raceworks helped out a little bit and Barra the World helped out a little bit, but you're not talking like, oh, they just gave me a conversion kit for free.
I remember the money going out and you getting stressed.
I was stressed, and then obviously I'm just paying Burto like a wage to work on it, which because this was a learning experience, I would think it'd be 3 to 4 months. I would have paid you full days, 3 to 4 months to work on it. So I think my total would maybe be slightly lower. But I don't think heaps lower. I probably spent 130 of my personal money on it, say.
We didn't even tell them that I crashed it, mate.
Yeah, that's true. We forgot about that. You say what happened? There's I don't know if they can see
a couple of scratches on this thing.
Lucky there was a bull bar on this time, but there's a few scuffs and scratches and a damaged number plate. What happened?
I left here one day after changing something on it. I literally pulled out of our street and went right and then right again, and it's really busy there at certain times of the day. It's like stop-start traffic. I don't know, I just sort of didn't stop in time and I ended up rear-ending someone. No one ever knew about it, but Tyler and Demi don't let me live it down, but we're lucky because this car was cursed for a minute.
I'm the only one out of you, me and Demi that hasn't crashed. And like, this car was pretty fine. Like the bull bar moved a little bit, but we just moved it back and it's got some paint missing and the number plate and that. I remember you rang me up and you said, so I've had a bit of a doozy. And I've crashed the 80 and I was like, what the
It could have been done before it was even started, this car, mate. It could have been written off before it was finished.
But yeah, that's it. So that's hopefully all your questions answered. Full cost breakdown. The car's done. When I say done, there's going to be, you know, we got to do like dual battery system, draw setup in the back, maybe some camping mods. There'll still be stuff to do. But, you know, four-wheel drives are a never-ending thing.
I think we've got the conversion literally buttoned up. Like,
Yeah.
we're ready to go away, and when are we going away? 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days. We're off in a 8-9 day trip in this thing, so we'll see how it goes.
I'm not taking a car, but I'm coming just in case one of... Well, how many cars do I have to fix? 4, potentially. The Jeep, the 80, Gary's car, and your car.
Dad's car's back for its first redemption trip after major breakdowns last one.
Yeah.
A freshly converted car and a freshly built Jeep. So it's a high-risk trip, so you're pretty much just getting paid to come, and you're going... Berto's going with Dad.
I'm going fishing.
On-call paid mechanic on the trip. That's it, mate. We're bloody done. Let's get out of here.
Just knock off, mate.
No, look at that. We nailed it.